So this is the first of the 2 weekly video lectures. This week we're going to talk about creating, maintaining healthy programs. A lot of this is going to be very licensing based, so community care licensing based, because this week is all about healthy and safe environments, and that is literally licensing's core mission, is to keep programs and children and adults healthy and safe in the programs that they're at. I do want to talk a lot about health. I want to talk a lot about working with parents, communicating with parents, proactively and reactively working with them. I do want to say that healthy programs and safe programs do include child abuse. I am kicking that later to the end of the semester. We're just going to kind of have a whole session on that because I think it's similar and it should be under that umbrella, but I think there's a lot of nuance and a lot of work that goes into it when we're training our staff. So that's going to be later in the semester, although it definitely is under this umbrella. I want to give it the weight that I think it really deserves. So from our textbook, from Maratz's work, children's state of wellness has an unquestionable effect on their development and ability to learn. Our knowledge of wellness and its promotion draws increasing attention to the pivotal role teachers play in identifying children's needs, creating high-quality environments that are safe and support learning. And I'm sorry, that is from Creating Healthy Environments. That's the text that I drew that quote from. So we're definitely working on programs that are clean and healthy for children, specifically minimizing illness and contagious issues to keep families working. So once again, I always like to give you a video reference or resource, especially if you are management, ways that you can train your own staff. I'm training the trainer kind of here. So the California Early Childhood Educator Competencies, I've posted previous videos, but I do really like this entire series. I think you could probably just have staff watch it incrementally and they would learn a lot. This one is fantastic about health, safety, and nutrition, kind of piggybacking on the work that we learned about last week. What does a healthy program kind of be comprised of? Hand washing, of course, the time, space, ability, and materials, a lot of this we already know. And then the commitment to reinforcing that your staff actually does this. They know how to do it and they do it consistently. It's one of the biggest things we can do to keep our programs healthy and safe. Disinfecting, cleaning, and sanitizing. What are the differences? When do we need to know this? We need to know for ourselves. We need to be able to communicate that we know it to licensing and to our families, and we need to be able to know and be rest assured that our staff knows how to do it as well. Healthy observations in some way, doing some kind of health check to make sure that children are healthy enough to be at school and exclude those who are ill. Health records includes health records and documentation, and then ways that you can support families as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we communicate with families. It's best to be proactive in all of our communication. So you need to have a health policy. You are probably going to have an overarching policy that talks about the general ideas, and then you're probably going to have like a sick child exclusion procedure. So like, this is what we like to keep children healthy and safe. If your child has diarrhea, if your child has a fever, all of those specific things that we know needs to also be communicated in writing and then signed for their file for all parents to know about. If there was anything that I needed to be explicitly clear about with any of my families, if I charge fees or they're not like getting subsidies, that's really important to me. More important than that is this one. When can your child be here? And what am I doing also to control illnesses and viruses? So in my policy, I am talking specifically about what my program does. We wash hands, we exclude sick kids, we focus on healthy nutrition, we prioritize great sleep during nap time, and that's things that I reinforce in my newsletters that has information. It's also things that I reinforce in my parent education if I have that within my program as well, or just information on my bulletin. I am constantly reinforcing the things that I do to keep your child healthy and safe. I think that's so important for our families to know that we're in this together. I don't want to get sick. My staff doesn't want to get sick. I don't want my staff to get sick because then they're calling out. And I don't want your kid to get sick, and I don't want my kids at home to get sick. I don't want anybody to get sick. It is a part of life. We're all destined to have a cold or a virus at least once a year typically. But what can I do to prevent that? So it's really, really important that we see this. So in my health policy, and I have procedures as well, and I am explicitly clear and it's explained in detail. So whatever you have in your program that you need parents to know about, you need to do it writing in the language that they can understand. You need to do it verbally in the language that they can understand. They need to sign it that they indicate understanding, and they will follow that policy. And then daily practice by your school. So the exclusion policy, the keep me home sheet that every program has, you follow that. You don't let kids stay if they're sick. You don't let staff stay if they're sick. You train your staff on it every single day, and you're clear and consistent. And then on top of that, the parents and families see you cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting all of the time. And we should be doing it all the time. We shouldn't even have to try. Like, it's not like, oh, I want the parents to see me doing this. We're cleaning so consistently and so well that the parents just happen to see it because it's part of our day. So our tables are always clean. Our floors are being always cleaned when they need to, and we're putting signs out to let them know that it's wet. When we walk into a center, we're not blown away by the smell of pee or poop or things like that. That might, you know, it's unfair. Kids poop all of the time, but that is like, think about your 5 senses coming into a room that has a lingering smell of poop or pee. It doesn't really set you up to think, this is a great clean environment. I totally want to like have my kid play here all day. So what can you do to minimize smells? How can you get things out of the way? How can it be perceived as clean? Because it actually is clean. So how can you communicate that in actions and words to your families? So that's proactive. That's in front of any problems that are going to happen. You do a daily health check. There is a clear policy for exclusion. And I like in exclusion policies as well, if there are places that take mildly ill children or more ill children, letting parents know about that too. So many of us work, and having to go home and figure out care can be really, really difficult. And we probably get a lot of cranky parents that way. If there's any mildly ill programs that you can refer to them to, that might be really great. And then you need to put it into practice, and you need to prioritize health in your own program. Doing hand washing is so important. It cuts down on like contagious diarrhea by like 40%. So diarrhea is going through your program. If all of the children and all of the staff are consistently washing their hands when they're supposed to, it will cut down on the rate that you're transmitting that to each other by almost 40%. It's really like almost half if you do that. So it's really important that we tell our staff why it's so important, and then we do it every single day. So what's reactively communicating? So a child gets sick, maybe they get sick at our program throughout the day, something happens, they wake up, they've got a fever, something like that. When a child is contagiously sick, the whole program then must also be informed as well. So fevers, you're just gonna send them home, you're gonna make that call, hey, it's 101.3, I need you to pick up within the next half an hour. When they're contagiously sick, the whole program needs to be informed. Lice, just terrible, everybody hates lice, don't wanna hear about it, but we gotta let them know, especially because it's so contagious and so many kids can get it. And in this age, when there's lots of little bodies together in a room, it's more contagious. Then the really terrible things like whooping cough, where you probably shouldn't even you should be giving them the paper, but you're also gonna need to talk to them. It's not just like in their box that they pick up at the end of the day, like this is what whooping cough happened, this is what you can do, this is the people you can contact at the county, that type of stuff. So in this situation, expect a visceral, typically upset reaction from families. They have to take off time, it's an inconvenience. Some families are gonna have significant consequences. If you think back to our legal part of this class where you only get 24 hours of sick time a year, kids are always more sick than that. Are you gonna be fired? Are you gonna be penalized? Are you gonna be put on probation? There are significant consequences that our families can face, and so expect that. It's one of the crappiest part of this job. I mean, I can't say it any other way, but we have to exclude children. We can't play by different rules. If you know of people, FCC homes, babysitters, mildly ill care, more significantly, like there's Together We Grow, they might take them. If you can refer a family to a program so that they can go back to work and maybe keep that job, please do it. And We have a desperate need for mildly ill care within our communities. If you want to open that up, I think there's probably an area for growth in that industry as well. And I wonder how we can continue to do it to support people who do have to work, especially here where we have military communities all over the Southern California area who maybe not have family around who can support them. So what is reactive communication? It's kind of like after something bad has happened. So a child is sick or children in the program are sick and you're going to have to react to it. We're going to have both proactive and reactive communication in our programs. We hope to be proactive about most things, kind of front load it, make sure the parents know how we're prioritizing healthy programs, but we always know that children are going to be able to be sick, and so we're going to have to reactively communicate as well and support them through an exclusion of their child within our program until they're feeling better. So your online assignment is to write a health policy. There's another one as well. It's a two-parter again. This is your health policy. So imagine you're giving a parent a tour or orientation. How would you explain in a clear and simple way to the parents, so this health policy is for families and to parents, what your health and safety policy is, how you keep children safe and healthy, and how you inform parents if their child is sick. So write a short policy to describe to parents when and why they should keep their child home from childcare. So specifically, you're talking about your exclusion policy. This should also include how staff keeps the classroom clean, the proactive piece. We're doing this. We sanitize, we wash toys, we hand wash all of the time. Whatever you're doing in the classrooms, tell them about it, and then say, if your child happens to be sick, we will send them home for these reasons, and you can return when. If you have any questions or concerns, please call. So that's the policy that you're writing for the first part about this health policy. So when it comes to our employees' record keeping and licensing has some specific requirements that they want as far as the records we keep on our employees and the records we keep on our children and family. So for your employees, you need to have a TB test. You need to have a medical clearance or the physical that they get from the doctor. You should have a signed statement about sick policy. They should have their CPR and first aid certification that's current and on file. And you should also have them sign the health policies and procedures for yourself. So for me, this included a lot of back safety because that's one of the #1 reasons that we go out on workman's comp. So what do I expect for you as far as back safety? How do you keep yourself healthy and safe when I don't want you at work because you're sick? So don't come in, call out 2 hours before and you're good. I don't want you coming in and vomiting. I don't want you coming in with a fever. I don't want you coming in with green snot hanging out of your nose. Then for children and families, they need to have a signed copy of the exclusion policy, a signed copy of our health policy, a signed copy of our safety policy as well. We need a medical clearance form. You need your immunizations or blue card form. You need and then I also keep a log of accidents and incidents that will happen. Accident reports are typically your own. If any incident, like a licensing incident form happened, I would also have a copy of that on file. We will talk more about incidents and how to report those to licensing in later on. So then documentation of child's milestones as well. That's a good way, like to keep track of the parent-teacher conferences or the DRDPs, in some way keeping track of what they are and are not doing in order to make sure that from a special education point of view or milestone point of view, they are not only being healthy and safe, but we're taking care of those social and emotional milestones, physical milestones, cognitive milestones, to be making sure they're hit as well. If not, communicating that as well as possible to the families. So once again, the entire core mission of licensing is to ensure the safety and health of children and children. That's literally what it is. So the most important thing to do is that you are very familiar with CDSS. That is kind of that's where you're going to go for any licensing forms. So the best thing is the relevant forms main page. It's an alphabetical list. So if you wanted to find an incident report, then it would be under I. If you wanted to find a physician's report, so any of those kind of relevant forms that you need for record keeping or just keeping your program healthy and safe, the alphabetical list in the main page is the best place to find it. I do remember years ago when we didn't have this and we didn't have it online, and so you had these really crappy copies that you would just always be making more copies of, and it always looked terrible. Now we have really fresh copies, which is so fantastic. It's not 20 years ago when we had terrible like paper files that were always looked off. Child care provider training. So this is the provider training that you need to have for licensing. So you need to have 16 hours of training for first-time licensees. So if you're getting a new license, then you need to do the 16 hours of training, 4 hours of pediatric first aid, 4 hours of pediatric CPR and or AEDs, and then 8 hours of preventative health and safety training. So really a Saturday and a Sunday, or 2 Saturdays in a row, and you could knock this out. Every 2 years, child care providers must renew their training by completing 4 hours of pediatric first aid and 4 hours of pediatric CPR. That's your Saturday, gone again every 2 years. I always go to this one in Carlsbad. The guy is super funny. I love him. I always go back to him for my CPR. He keeps the day moving. He's been doing it so many times. He's got all of these funny jokes. I've done it so many times with him, I anticipate his jokes. But I do really appreciate it. And it's nice to kind of have that system built up in my life. Then it comes due, I go ahead and do it. I don't even actually need it anymore. Like in my day-to-day work, I am no longer doing direct care, but I do enough volunteer work with children and occasional like milestones or special education work with children that I do for my own self, keep this up to date, TB as well. Because I think that health and safety of children is really, really important. Even in like consulting roles that I do value and put a, I'm willing to pay that on my own in order to keep my skills up to kind of protect you. So, just I was talking about this funny guy. The most important thing to do is to make sure that there's a training program and the instructor is certified and all that type of stuff. There are some unscrupulous people. There's some online programs that don't quite meet up to the snuff. So just checking it out to make sure that it's a great program that you should be in. So deficiencies per licensing. So this is things that licensing tells us in their website. So they have a list, they have a web page, and on it is the things that most programs are hit on. The biggest one is it's clean, safe, and sanitary, and they don't have a lot of information on that. The second one is more telling, talking about disinfectants, cleaning solutions, poisons, and other items that pose a danger readily available to children shall be stored or inaccessible to children. So this is a huge deficiency. Most likely disinfectants and cleaning solutions that should not be around children are stored in classrooms or not stored where they're supposed to be. The third biggest one, so the reason that people are getting hit by licensing in this category are they're not maintaining documentation of the required immunizations or exemptions from immunizations. And then also the personnel's personal record is maintained by the daycare center. So your TB test, your CPR for all of your staff, in addition to other children's immunizations. Those are the two kind of record keeping when it comes to health issues that we are kind of getting deficiencies on as well. So know that licensing is aware of these things. They are looking for these things, and you need to be prepared in all of these areas. More licensing health regulations, because there's a lot in licensing. So there's a daily health check. So this is something we're supposed to do with any obvious systems. Children should not be brought into the program, and that's why I kind of banged on about it in the beginning of this lecture. Is it's really important that children are sick are not at school to keep us healthy, and because licensing requires it. If they see a child that's obviously sick, you are going to be hit. You also need to complete 15 hours of health and safety training, and then an isolation illness. So a child gets sick in your program, there needs to be a place to isolate and care for the child before they get picked up. So we usually have written down that it should be about 30 minutes by the time we call, by when the parent gets there. That's fantastic. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes they're in Ramona and they need to get back to Oceanside. Sometimes they're in Oceanside and they need to get back to you in Ramona. Sometimes they're in a meeting and they text you, they're on their way as soon as their boss stops talking to them. Something like that. So we have to tell the parents, but we also need to, especially if they're puking, have diarrhea, anything like that, have a space for the child to be isolated. Typically up in the front office, there is a cot or a cot that we can take out to keep the child away from the other children and maybe minimize contact. Immunizations. So yeah, immunizations are a funny and hot topic issue. I deeply, strongly, and with a massive amount of scientific background and research know that all children should be vaccinated, except for immune compromised children. So in my work with children with special needs, I have worked with children who have had heart attacks at 6 months old. I have worked with children who have had cancer. I've worked with children who have passed away from heart failure. I've worked with children who have significant chromosomal issues where they can't walk, crawl, eat, any of those things on their own. I deeply love and care for those children, but they cannot be vaccinated. They can't do a lot of things. They can't go to parks to play. They can't go watch a family member play baseball. They can't do a lot of things when they're recovering from surgery or because of a chromosomal issue that affects their entire immune system. Those children can't be vaccinated. Healthy children in our community can. This law was put into place so that we can build up our herd immunity. There are certain communities in California that have such low rates that we are seeing things we haven't seen in 50 or 60 years come back, or we've seen jumping rates in whooping cough. Measles, 2014, Disneyland. What, 16 people had it? 300 were exposed. I feel very strongly, probably because of my special education background, protecting those children who couldn't do it because they were so medically fragile, that this is a good thing. It's a pain. Parents can get around it. They found naturopaths, they found osteopaths, and I know they communicate this with each other, and they find somebody who has some kind of medical degree and they get them to sign off. I did trainings on this, and there are places all over. There are children's hospitals, and I think it was the University of Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. I can find the information if you want it. They will send you free resources, brochures, and things to support and to educate parents on the safety and importance of vaccinating their children. What you do need to do is to make sure that they've submitted their child's immunization records as cert. Then you need to keep it, and you need to have this blue card, the California School Immunization Record, and keep it on file as well. I know that families are getting around this, specifically in school age and elementary schools. There's lots of exemptions going on, having doctors sign the back of it as well. You know, we need to look at that from an education standpoint and reinforcing how safe and necessary these vaccinations are. This is a huge area in preschool that we are getting hit on. If you don't have this up to date for all of your children, this is a deficiency area that the licensing people are looking for when they come out. So specifically, once again, measles, talking about 2014 when it was up at Disneyland, but then in 2015 we saw it as well. We do know there's physicians' written statements that people can have sign off, specifically in elementary schools and school age programs. Specifically, it's less so for a public school, but for other programs that serve children, you might want to have a policy in addition to this about unvaccinated children. So is a written statement on the permanent medical exemption enough for you and you're going to accept them, or are you not? So in my work for the county, a lot of families were unvaccinated. I did not serve those children, especially when I was trying to get pregnant and then when I was pregnant myself. We were very careful with the fact that I could not be exposed to measles. That would have been catastrophic for my pregnancy and for my fetus if I had been exposed to it. And then, a lot of times before you get pregnant, you don't know that you're pregnant, and so we wanted to prevent that as well. After my youngest daughter had her first year shots, I took one family that was unvaccinated because they were in an area that I served that no one else did. It was our own decision about how we wanted to serve those families who chose not to vaccinate. So it's up to you, and you might want to consider it, especially in school age programs that maybe have not thought about it. You might want to have some kind of policy, especially if you're in some of these communities that has declining rates of vaccinations, if you want to continue to take those types of children, because they have to have some kind of exemption, but it's still up to you if you want to take them as well. Once again, I have a strong background in children with special needs, as I was talking about. So I wanted to talk about health special needs and not delays. So it is a good idea to keep track of how children are growing, and that's what most of us do in our programs. We will let parents know about possible milestones like in speech and language or cognitive that they might need their pediatrician for in order to get them speech services or something. We also have health special needs. It can be something like asthma, or it can be something like epilepsy, Tourette's. It can be an inability to eat or digest certain types of foods, severe allergies. There's a lot of them. It's typically a really good idea to have and require additional medical documentation for the file. What kind of medical need is it? What does the child need from me? Then you're also going to need to look into storage. You should have a locked medicine box, but typically you might need some other storage space as well. We've had kids in some of my programs that have had oxygen. And so we were having discussions about like if we ever lost power, would we need to have like G tubes as well? So they needed to have food pumped in from a pump. So talking about like, would we possibly need generators if we were to lose power, something like that. So it brings up really good and important discussions. The biggest thing is you're just collaborating with the parents. The parents and the medical professionals, nurses, doctors, occupational therapists, physical therapists, while a doctor might not be able to come out, they can still send you their wishes about the child being in care. So we need to know specifically, and that might require notes, it might require conversations, but typically all of these things happen really easily with the family as long as the family is willing to work with you and to communicate what their child needs. Typically, there should be some kind of tracking system specifically for medical needs, especially for like allergies, asthma, epilepsy, things like that. So we know what child has these medical issues, which room they're going to be in, which teachers are responsible for them, what medications they need and when. If all of the teachers have been trained on their allergies, so this is John. John's really allergic to peanuts. This is Aiden. Aiden has epilepsy. His medication is in the front. If he has a seizure, call on your walkie-talkie so we know right away and we will come down and assist him. Whatever the training is, the teacher knows about the need. They've been trained on it. They've signed that they're aware of it and they feel comfortable providing the care to the child. Epilepsy was a hard one. I had a child who had grand mal seizures. Those are the ones where you kind of shake on the ground. She also had petit mal seizures where you just kind of like blank out. So she'd be talking and having fun and you you'd do this in front of her face and you couldn't get her back. She was having a seizure, everything that we consider with her grand mal where you're unresponsive and things like that, that's how she was. So, we had to train the staff a lot. I needed training. I needed to feel comfortable. We got there. We had her for 3 or 4 years. She started as a 1.5-year-old, left us fully through our school age program. We were able to meet her needs every step of the way because the parents communicated well. I even had a conversation with a neurologist when we were really struggling with the type of medication she had. It all just worked together because I was willing to collaborate and I was willing to put systems in place for this child to keep her healthy and safe. So in conclusion, we're creating programs that address every single health need of the children in your care. Creating programs and systems that support the children, support their special needs, support their health behaviors, and exclude them when they're sick, supports families, and the biggest part of this is creating well-written health policies that you explicitly explain to your parents and then practice every single day in order to keep the program as healthy as possible for you, your staff, your kids, and your families. All right, there's a second one on safety right after this.